I'd be willing to bet, no matter how bad you think Canada Post's finances are right now, it's actually worse. For starters, Canada Post loses a mind-boggling amount of money each year. Down $748 million last year alone. The year before that, $548 million. Minus 490, minus 779, minus 153, minus 276. Over the last 6 years, which, by the way, is how long it's been since Canada Post last turned a profit, it's lost almost $3 billion. Now, something most people don't know about Canada Post is that they are a crown corporation, but they don't actually take any taxpayer dollars at all. So they have to make money to survive. But according to their own annual report, letter mail volumes have eroded significantly. There's been a major decline in our cash position. Canada Post's financial situation is unsustainable. Its long-standing role is under significant threat. We expect to fall below our required operating and reserve cash requirements by early 2025. Let me translate that last one for you. They'll be out of money by early next year.
They're in very deep trouble. They're in very deep trouble.
So how did Canada Post get into this situation, and what would it take to save it? 2006 was a good year for Canada Post. That's when letter mail volume peaked at 5.5 billion pieces of mail sent. But since then, for almost 20 years now, the number of letters Canadians send to each other has been in free fall. Here's what the last 10 looked like. Minus 6.1%, minus 6.8%, minus 8.8%, and it just keeps dropping. By last year, Canada Post was delivering only about 2 billion letters.
To the way I like to put it, my university has about 35,000 students. Imagine if 30,000 of them just disappeared and all of a sudden we're a university of 5,000. It would just be catastrophic. That's what's happening to the post office.
And it's important to underline how lucrative letters were to Canada Post. Canada Post used to turn millions of dollars in profits each year.
Each working day of the year throughout Canada, the post office handles about 10 million pieces of mail.
Canada Post says it made almost $100 million in the past year, and it expects even bigger profits in the future.
It built huge cash reserves. The experts we spoke to said there have at times been as much as a 50% profit margin on letter delivery, which is a phenomenal margin. And Canada Post has a monopoly on mail. So by law, only Canada Post can deliver letter mail to or from any point in the country at the standard postage rate. Now, in exchange for this exclusivity, Canada Post must follow a very simple requirement, that it must deliver mail 5 days a week to all Canadians everywhere. Every address has to be served in some way. In exchange, they get their monopoly on mail. Problem is, that monopoly is worth less and less every year, and it's actually kind of a liability. Here's how many new addresses Canada Post had to add to its list of millions of Canadian addresses it has to serve. 5 days a week, rain or shine. And those routes can get more and more expensive as communities expand and new homes get built farther and farther away from city centers.
We'll have 50,000 Canadian workers, postal workers, marching up and down the streets of Canada 5 days a week, 52 weeks a year, to 17.5 million addresses with nothing to deliver. And the deficits will be soaring to $3, $4, $5 billion a year. And I cannot imagine any future government, no matter which party it is, saying, well, we're okay with that.
Now, this problem might have been surmountable, if not for a second death blow to Canada Post, a race in which it is only falling further and further behind.
The Crown Corporation says the number of parcels is staggering.
Amazon and online shopping in general really transformed how we think of mail, right? We don't get as excited about letters anymore. Now it's all about, when is my package arriving? For a time, Canada Post was really competitive in this space.
Named after Canada's first black letter carrier, Canada Post's newly opened parcel processing plant here in Scarborough is being dubbed the country's new e-commerce hub.
Just last year, it unveiled a brand new package sorting plant in Scarborough, Ontario. It could handle 1 million packages a day, process an incoming package and have it ready for dispatch in less than 4 minutes. It doubles Canada Post's capacity in the Greater Toronto Area, and it is a critical hub for the entire network. This was important because just before the pandemic, Canada Post controlled a whopping 62% of the parcel delivery market. But just last year, as online shopping kept exploding, Canadians are receiving more and more packages than we ever have before. Canada Post's revenue went down.
Paradoxically, Canada Post in the last 24 to 30 months has lost half of its market share in parcels, not because the market is disappearing, but because they're not competitive.
Smaller, nimbler companies moved in. Like, I don't know about you, but it feels like every time I receive a package nowadays, it's shipped to me by a company that I've never heard of.
These are gig drivers who own their own car, and they come at Friday night at 10 o'clock and drop it on my front porch.
Their business model, low skill, low overhead, low cost. Their employees often don't have the same kind of benefits, overtime pay, vacation time, bargaining power, if they have a union at all.
The people have stopped mailing, and they stopped mailing last week.
The letter carriers are continuing their program of nationwide rotating strikes.
Contract! Now!
There's lots of honking, lots of more picketers now than there was last hour.
And remember, Canada Post by law has to maintain operations everywhere, even in those parts of the country that aren't all that profitable, because people are too spread out, harder to get to. In bigger cities, where all the money is, competitors are like piranhas, and Canada Post itself knows this.
Financially, things are very challenging. The reality is things have moved so quickly in the last 2 years that the platform we've built in terms of increasing our volumes in parcels due to e-commerce has been chipped away by the competition.
And in Canada Post's own annual report, we are the only major carrier that does not offer regular 6-day-a-week delivery in major urban centers. Some competitors offer 7-day-a-week delivery nationally.
We didn't expect our market share to drop that quickly and for the competitors to take that much of the volume.
Parcels are the single most important way Canada Post makes money, about half of its total business. But every piece of this pie, parcels, letter mail, junk mail, they've all gotten smaller. So Canada Post's bread and butter of delivering letters is crumbling away, and the booming market of parcel delivery is too crowded. So how do you solve this problem? Well, it depends who you ask. Canada Post's position is that it needs to be freed of the requirement that it deliver daily to every single Canadian.
Postal Service Charter was put in place in 2009. It hasn't changed much, and that dictates how and when mail is delivered. But that was back when Netflix was delivering DVDs through the mail. So the world has changed a lot.
So maybe daily letter delivery becomes every other day. It also wants its employees to be more flexible, like maybe delivering packages on weekends without it being considered overtime. But the union sees things differently.
So the union feels that the way for Canada Post to survive is actually to expand its services, to offer more to Canadians, and that could be a way that the company could bring in more money. So one of the things that they often point to is postal banking. Basically, it allows you to do banking services at a post office. Another thing is check-ins for seniors. So your letter carrier literally also checking in on seniors and then bringing in some profit that way.
But if you ask our expert, Ian Lee, he proposes something a little more drastic.
We do not need 8,000 post offices because we don't go there anymore. And they're costing $1.5 billion to $2 billion a year. I've argued that they should be completely franchised or closed. That's very radical to a lot of people. But if you go on to any post office, and I do go into them from time to time because I do the research, and there's nobody there. There's just nobody there. So you kill the post offices, or most of them, and you kill home delivery. Right off the bat, you pulled out around $2 billion of savings to reinvest into parcels.
Kill home delivery right off the bat. By that he means end door-to-door letter delivery altogether. Everyone gets their mail through a community mailbox or some other centralized point. Now, you may be wondering, where does the federal government land on all of this? I mean, they own Canada Post, they regulate it, but right now they're pretty non-committal.
But is it time to end the requirement for daily letter mail delivery for Canada Post? Is that something that
is an option which Canada Post is apparently considering, obviously talking with unions and leaders and workers as it is developing this option and among many others as well.
But this much is true. They're on the clock. Remember, Canada Post's own forecast is that they're out of money by early next year. So whatever happens next has to happen fast and with some serious money behind it.